Hello students, I am Mohan Kumari. Welcome to MK classes for biology. Today I am going to continue the NEET synopsis part of the chapter Reproduction in Organisms. In the previous video, I have explained you about the different modes of asexual reproduction. In today's class, I am going to explain one of the important modes of asexual reproduction, that is vegetative propagation. Yes, in today's class we are going to study about vegetative propagation. In the previous video, I have explained you about the modes of asexual reproduction. In that we had studied fission, budding, gyme, sporulation, fragmentation and regeneration. In today's class we are going to study another mode of asexual reproduction. It is the vegetative reproduction. So in higher plants, especially angiosperms, it is a very important type of asexual reproduction is found. So that asexual reproduction is called as the vegetative propagation. And it is a process of formation of new plants from the vegetative plant parts. So the parts of the plants which are involved in the vegetative propagation are called as vegetative propagules. And this vegetative propagation involves two types. Those are natural methods of vegetative propagation and artificial methods of vegetative propagation. Let us study one by one now. Let us see natural method of vegetative propagation. So in this natural method of vegetative propagation, here which involves the different parts of the plant in the propagation of the plants. So those parts which can involve roots, stem and leaves. Let us study the first one, the propagation by roots. Propagation by roots. The taproots of some plants which develop adventitious buds. Taproot of some plants which can develop some adventitious buds to form new plants. That you can see in case of Dalbergia. So in case of Dalbergia, the taproot of some plants like Dalbergia which develop adventitious buds to form new plants. So in some plants like sweet potato and dahlia, the root tubers develop adventitious buds and this which will develop into new plants. So in case of sweet potato and dahlia, you can see here the sprouted root of sweet potato. Here the root of the sweet potato, modified root, where you can see here the sprouting bud which develop into young plant. So this is the propagation by roots. Let us see propagation by stem. Propagation by stems. So certain stem modification takes place in the vegetative propagation, such as tubers. Tubers. It is a modified stem modification which is necessary to propagate to produce the new plant. In case of tubers, these have buds over their nodes and those buds which produce into new plantlets when placed in the soil. That type of propagation you can see in case of potato. And the next one is bulb. So bulbs which are said to be the underground condensed shoot that are provided with the buds which form a new plant. You can see in case of onion. And the third modified stem which meant for vegetative propagation is the corm. So here corm which is said to be unbranched solen underground stem. Corm is the unbranched solen underground stem with circular nodes. These nodes having buds. These buds which germinate into new plants. You can see in case of colocasia. And the next modification of stem for propagation is the rhizome. So here rhizome is the main underground stem with buds which give rise to new aerial shoots during favorable condition. This you can see in case of ginger. And the another important type is the suckers. Suckers are the slender subaerial branches which develop from the base of aerial shoots, breaking of this shoot which develop into new plant. You can see in case of mint. And the another modified stem for vegetative propagation is the runners. So runners which are said to be narrow horizontal branches which develop at the base of crown and roots at intervals, which breakings helps in the vegetative propagation. This you can see in the cynodon. And the next one is stolon. So the stolon, which can be called as the arched horizontal branches. Arched horizontal branches which develop at the base of crown. Breaking results in the formation of new plant. You can give strawberry as the example. And the other modification for vegetative propagation, it is offset. So offset consists of one internode and the long runners, breaking which helps in the vegetative propagation. You can see in case of eichhornia. So these are the modified stem for vegetative propagation. So we have studied modified stems like tubers, bulbs, corm, rhizomes, suckers, runners, stolons, offsets which are involved in the vegetative propagation. Now let us study about propagation by leaves. So propagation by leaves we are going to study. So here leaves of many plants have adventitious buds. Such leaves when fall on ground, their buds develop roots and mature into individual plants. This is how the leaves which are involved in the vegetative propagation. And this type of propagation you can see in the plants like bryophyllum and the begonia, which is a perennial flowering plant. So, and another important propagation by turions and bulbils. So let us see what are these turions. A turion is a special type of fleshy bud. Turion is a special type of fleshy buds that develop in aquatic plants. And it is a solen bud which contains stored food. It detaches from the parent plant and germinates under favorable conditions. You can see in case of Utricularia, which is commonly called as bladderworts, which grow in fresh water and also even in the wet soil. The next one is the bulbils of agave. So bulbils are called as the fleshy buds produced in the axile of the foliage leaves in place of axillary buds, and these which will grow to form new plants when shed and fall on the ground. In a century plant like agave species, the floral buds are modified into bulbils which grow into new plants when shed from the mother plant. So this is about the propagation by bulbils. So this is about the natural method of vegetative propagation. So in the natural method of vegetative propagation, we have studied propagation by roots, propagation by stem, propagation by leaves, and also the propagation by turions and bulbils. So the next we are going to study the artificial method of plant propagation. So that includes cutting. So here in this method, when a small piece of any plant organ, which can include stem, root or leaf, used for propagation. So it can be root cutting, stem cutting and leaf cutting. So let us study about root cuttings now. Root cuttings. Here in this root cuttings, the pieces of roots are used to artificially propagate new plants. So it can be used to propagate blackberry, raspberry, tamarind, lemon, orange. And the second one is stem cuttings. So 20 to 30 centimeter long pieces of 1 year old stems are cut and are planted. Before planting, they are treated with root promoting chemicals like IBA, that is indole 3-butyric acid. So this stem cuttings can be used to propagate rose and the sugarcane. And the third is the leaf cutting. So leaf cutting, here leaves are cut transversely into 2 to 3 parts and planted in vertical position in the soil. You can use this leaf cuttings in the propagation of Sansevieria plant and the Saint Paulia. Sansevieria, which is a flowering plant in the family Asparagaceae, and it is a native plant of Africa, Madagascar and Southern Asia, and it is commonly called as snake plant. Saint Paulia, which is a herbaceous perennial plant which can produce flowering plant. So this is about the cutting. So in the artificial methods, the first type is the cutting. So we can use root cuttings, stem cuttings, even the leaf cuttings to propagate the plants. So next we are going to study the second type of artificial method of vegetative propagation. It is the layering. So it is the layering. So in case of layering, layering. It is a method where the adventitious roots are induced to develop on a soft stem by defoliating the soft basal branch, and a small injury or cut is given. So here in this method, adventitious roots are induced to develop on a soft stem, and that stem which will be defoliated stem, and the roots are developed at the soft basal branch by where you can see a small injury or cut is given in that part. So the injured defoliated part, now the injured defoliated part of the stem is pegged in the soil to develop adventitious roots. So now first what we need to do, we need to remove all the leaves of the stem and make a small injury or cut in that, and that injured defoliated stem which will be pegged in the soil to develop adventitious roots. The pegged down branch of the plant is called as the layer. Once the root develop, the layer is separated and planted. So this is called as the layering. So layering can be seen in different types. In that the first one is mound layering. M-O-U-N-D, mound layering. So in this type of layering, what you can say, it is a mound layering. So the shoot is pruned, and lower part is covered by soil when a number of new shoot develops. When the number of new shoot develops, the root of this plant, the shoot of this plant is pruned, and the lower part of the shoot, which will be covered by a soil. And this layering can be used in developing gooseberry and the currant, which is a shrub of the genus Ripes of the gooseberry family, and the juicy berries of currant used in jams and jellies. This is the one method of layering, which is called as mound layering. So next one is air layering. So what you can see here is the air layering, or it can be called as gootee. In this type, about 3.3 to 5 centimeter ring of bark is removed. About 3 to 5 centimeters ring of bark is removed from near the base of an aerial shoot. Here is the aerial shoot, which is nearer to the basal region. So here a layer of bark is, a ring of bark is removed, and it is covered by a thin plaster. This will be covered by a thick plaster of grafting clay. This can include hay, cow dung, clay and water to make the grafting clay. And with this we need to add a small quantity of root promoting hormone. Then it is covered with the wrapped in polythene. So this is how air layering can be done. So after 2 to 3 months, the roots appear and the shoot is removed below the bandaged region to be used for planting. This method of layering can be used. This is how the layering can be done. So this method of layering can be used in the propagation of lychee, pomegranate, guava, orange and the lemon. Here you can see a ring of bark is removed in this region, and that will be covered with the thick layer of the grafting clay with the root promoting hormone, and it is covered with the polythene covering. This is about the air layering. So the next we are going to study is the serpentine layering. You can see here is the serpentine layering. So in the serpentine layering, the branch of the plant is pegged at several places. A single branch is pegged at several places so as to form many plantlets. In the pegged region, it can produce the roots, adventitious roots, in order to produce many plants. This is called as serpentine layering. So this is about different types of layering. That is, different types of layering which involves mound layering, air layering, and the serpentine layering. So next we are going to study about grafting. So here is the grafting. So grafting, it is a technique of connecting two plant parts, usually a root system and a shoot system of two different plants, in such a way that they unite and later develop as a composite plant. So in the grafting we need to take the root part of one plant and the shoot part of the another plant, and artificially we made the two parts of the plant which has to be unite and later develop as a composite single plant. Here a small shoot of plant with the superior character is employed. The shoot what we are taking in this grafting, that should consist of superior characters, and that shoot part of the plant we are using in grafting is called as graft or the scion. The root part of the other plant what we are using in this grafting should be disease resistant and has good root system, and it is called as the stalk. And the grafting which is not successful in monocots, and it is used in the propagation of developing the plants like mango and the apple, etc. So let us study about various techniques of grafting. So there are various techniques of grafting that involves tongue or whip grafting, wedge grafting, crown grafting, side grafting, bud grafting. Let us study one by one now. So first we'll go with the tongue or whip grafting. So here is the tongue, or we can say it as the whip grafting. So in this method, both the stalk, the root system what we are using, and the scion, shoot system what we are using, both stalk and scion which are cut obliquely at about the same angle, and these are joined and wrapped to develop a single composite plant. So the next one is wedge grafting. You can see it is a wedge grafting. Wedge grafting. So here in the wedge grafting, in this wedge grafting, a V-shaped notch is made. V-shaped notch is made on the stalk, and the wedge-shaped cut is made on the scion, and V-shaped notch in the stalk and wedge-shaped cut in the scion. So both are joined and sealed, wrapped to develop into a single composite plant. This is called as wedge grafting. And the third type of grafting, it is the crown grafting. So in this crown grafting, several scions, you can see here the scion, like this, several scions having wedge shaped cut, here you can see a wedge shaped cut, are grafted on the sides of the stalk, where you can see which are grafted on the slits. Here we need to make slits at the top of the stalk. Here is the stalk plant. where we need to make slit on the top of the stalk plant, and the scions having wedge-shaped cut which are grafted on these slits, and it is wrapped and allowed to develop into a new single composite plant. This is how crown grafting is done. So the next one is side grafting. So next one is side grafting. So in the side grafting, the single scion having wedge shaped cut is inserted in a lateral slit of the stalk. Here you can see a slit in the lateral side of the stalk, and this wedge shaped scion which will be grafted in this region or inserted in this region. So then we need to wrap and allow it to develop into a single composite plant. This is how side grafting is done. So in case of tongue and wedge grafting, the scion and stalk have almost the same diameter. Whereas in case of crown grafting, side grafting, crown and side grafting, stalk, the stalk has more diameter. You can see here the stalk which will be having more diameter than the scion. So scions can be inserted in that region. So the examples of the plants propagated by grafting are mango, roses, apple, rubber, citrus plant, pear, plum and peach. So another type of grafting which is called as the bud grafting. So in this case of grafting, it is similar to other technique of grafting, but except that the scion should consist of, that means stem part of the grafted plant, which should consist of a bud. It should consist of a bud along with a small portion of the bark, and that bark should have the intact cambium, meristematic tissue, which should be present. So the living tissue of scion bud, now it is inserted into the incision made in the stalk, so that it reaches up to the cambium of the stalk. A small bud should remain exposed outside in the air. The joint is thoroughly sealed using bandage. After 3 to 5 weeks, the bud which will begins to grow. As soon as the bud sprouts, the stalk is cut above the level of graft. And this can be used in the propagation of rose, apple, peach, etc. So this is about the grafting techniques. So grafting, which includes different techniques, that is tongue or whip grafting, wedge grafting, crown grafting, side grafting and the bud grafting. So the another important method of propagation artificially with the help of micro propagation. So this method, micro propagation, which method includes propagation of plants by culturing the cells or the tissues of that particular plant, and it is also known as tissue culture. The culturing of these plant parts, either tissue or the cells, results in the formation of callus, which is an undifferentiated mass of cells, which later differentiates to form a large number of plantlets. And it is useful in obtaining virus and disease-free plants, homozygous diploids, and the quick commercial production of orchids and carnations. This is about the micro propagation. Yes, in today's class, we had studied about the vegetative propagation. The types of vegetative propagation includes natural and artificial method. In that natural method, we had studied propagation by roots, stems, leaves, and turions and bulbils. In artificial method, we have studied different methods of artificial propagation. That includes cutting. Cutting includes root, stem, and leaf cutting. And the second one, layering. Layering of different types: mound layering, air layering, and serpentine layering. And the grafting, which includes tongue or whip grafting, wedge grafting, crown grafting, side grafting, and the bud grafting. And the other type, which is called as micro propagations. So these are the different methods of vegetative propagation. Thank you.